There. Maybe just the two of us, huh? Interesting.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi, Aaron. Yeah.
Hello. Let's see. Okay, there we
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Ernie.
Hello.
Hi, Ernie.
Okay, we left off on page 242. The halachic status of the Ezras Noshim. We wanted to save that for this week.
Sorry, what page is it?
Susie, go up into the library upstairs. I have 12 volumes there. Volume 12. We're on still on volume 12. We're on page 242. An additional halachic issue pertaining to the structure of the synagogue and the mechitza is the status of the women's section, the Ezras Noshim, within the context of the rules of Kedushas Beis HaKnesses. Opinions vary regarding a space earmarked for women's tefillah. Historically, sometimes a space alongside the sanctuary within the synagogue building, and sometimes a separate structure adjacent to the synagogue. Some poskim, including the Avnei Nezer, writes that if the Ezras Noshim has Kedusha, it is not the same as that of the primary Beis HaKnesses. Bidvar Beis HaKnesses, asher rotzim la'amid samach la'Ezras Noshim, v'rotzim liftoch chalonos b'Beit HaKnesses el Ezras Noshim. They want to open up windows from the Beit HaKnesset proper to this women's gallery. It sounds like an upstairs gallery. Or they wanted to put the balcony to half the height of the window of the synagogue so that they would have light. Shapir dami lemevirachi or lo? Shuva. This is the answer. Hine outside Rishon yes isher. Outside Rishon yesh iser mishum netitzas even beveis hakneses. You're not allowed to dismantle stones from a shul. You're not allowed to fill in a window. He's going to explain the din. Ulam adavar barur, after shitat ha'Eliyahu Rabbah, the Eliyahu Rabbah was also an achron. Ein heter lebetzorch ledover hakodesh techaygav v'lo chashav mekalkel. You're allowed to do it for some reason of kedusha, because by opening up a window, you wouldn't be destroying the shul. Masha ein came, but he done so but that's if the window is opening up into the men's shul. Here we're talking about opening up a window into the women's section. And here comes the punchline. Women are not counted when we're counting up a minyan of 10 people in order to be able to say Kaddish or Kedusha. They're allowed to answer Form Shabikdusha. They can say Amen to Kaddish or to Kedusha. They don't have a chiyuv. Gam lo yichoshev beis hakneses. Then he says, basically, that the Ezras Noshim is not considered the shul. Va'afilu mea kechad damyin ayin rish perek keretzim mevorchim. It means even 100 women don't add up to one to count for a minyan. Ve'ein bo mishum kedusha. It does not have the sanctity. The Ezras Noshim, he's saying, even if you're going to say it's got some holiness, it does not have the same holiness as the men's shul. So by making the Ezras Noshim detracting for the Beis HaKnesses, he would not permit it. It's not needed for the holiness of the regular shul. You cannot we are supposed to tear down the Avodah Zarah in Eretz Canaan and burn the Asherah trees. But you should not do that in a place of Hashem, in a shul. So you're not allowed to be mashchis in a shul. Thus, when the plans for opening a women's space for tefillah called for compromising the men's Beit HaKnesset, the Avnei Nezer pointed out that such a space, i.e. the women's Ezras Noshim, does not have the Kedusha of Beit HaKnesset. However, before our wives get too upset, the Aruch HaShulchan writes otherwise, indicating that so long as the place is earmarked for prayer, it has Kedusha of Beis HaKnesses. Ha'azar shel Beis HaKnesses, ein lahem din Kedusha of Beis HaKnesses. Afilu mispalalim b'hem akroi. Various hallways is what he's referring to. Don't have Kedusha Beis HaKnesses, even if sometimes you create a little minyan in an outside hallway. But for example, the women's gallery, where women are always davening there, so he says, "V'chein beit hakneses shel noshim yesh alei kedushas beit hakneses kivan shenoshim mispalel sham." The Aruch HaShulchan says it does have kedusha. The davar pashat shachatzer shesavi beit hakneses. If you have a courtyard around the shul, or gan, or a park, or parties, or an orchard, or itztavois, These are like platforms. Ein b'hem shum kedusha. Even if they open up in the Beis HaKnesses. You certainly shouldn't do something there which is not bekovedik. According to those opinions that treat the Ezras Nashim with less sanctity than the men's section, it would seem that the restrictions of Kedushas Beis HaKnesses, such as eating and drinking, would not apply, though one may not act in an improper manner there either. On the other hand, those opinions that treat the Ezras Nashim exactly like the men's section would hold that all the rules of Kedushas Beis HaKnesses that we discussed the last few weeks apply. We will conclude this section by noting that these opinions dispute only the halachic status which would be applied to a space designated for women's tefillah. There are also some poskim who rule that the Ezras Nashim has absolutely no sanctity at all, the Chai Adam, and others who suggest that it may have even greater sanctity.
Ernie,
Var Yoshua. Yes?
the Avnei Nezer's viewpoint is you have a structure, and then the way I understand it, you're putting a structure next to the Beis Knesset structure, and then they want to pierce windows through the wall. So, okay, then the question is that part of the Beis Knesset or not? And then according to him, whether it has the kedusha of the original structure.
Well, you're going to be by opening.
But I don't
up
think the
windows,
second case
it
really
destroys.
compares to the first case.
What's the second case?
Where that it does have where the Ezras Nashim does have a makom of kedusha. Well, I mean, because it's a gallery within the way I understand it, within the original structure is the way I understand it, whereas the original case under the Avnei Nezer is a separate structure that was being built adjacent to the original structure. So it seems like we're comparing two different things here.
It seems like the Avnei Nezer, even if the gallery was in the Beis HaKnesses, he seems to say that since women are not counted in a minyan, then it's not considered a place of davar shebekdusha. He says they can answer amen, but it doesn't have the restrictions of a Beit Knesset. The Aruch HaShulchan says no, that doesn't agree with that. Then it says, many shuls have in fact used courtyards or outdoor spaces for minyanim due to COVID. If these areas are also used for other purposes, they still don't have the sanctity of a Beit Knesset. If they were used exclusively for tefillah during that time, then they may have in fact the status of a Beit Knesset. However, a space that was intended to be used for tefillah only for a limited time does not retain its sanctity afterwards. I think that's very relevant to all of us because we did use certain spaces. In our shul, we used a courtyard where we now have kiddushes there. So, but it was clear that was the place, we davened there for 2 years. But it seems from these statements, if it reverts back to its old use, then it doesn't have the status of a Beit Knesset. If a particular gallery is used for Torah classes, it has the sanctity of a Beit Knesset or Beit Midrash in every respect. And the Piskei Teshuvah says, "Im lomdim sham Torah, o miskaimim sham minyonei tefillah, yesh b'kedusas Beis HaKnesset, Beis HaMikdash, chol dvar inyan." Let's say a shul has a certain side room, and they always daven there. There's always the second minyan there, or whatever, or they always learn there. So then that place acquires the kedusha of the Beis HaKnesses.
It seems that he's talking about if it's otherwise used for women's minyan. In other words, when the women aren't there, it's used for Torah and for Beis HaKnesset.
Initially, he says, the opinions like the machloikes between the Avnei Nezer and the Aruch HaShulchan applied to a makom designated for women, like the women's section. But he's saying, but let's say Shari Tzedek has a back room where there are always minyanim there, and they're always learning there. So that room becomes like a Beis Knesset, has the status of a Beis Knesset.
No, I understand, but I think he's talking about, since it's in this section, and follows what we were just saying, that if this is normally, in other words, it's used for like the women's section. So the women's section, sometimes they have classes there, or the men use it. So he's saying that if even if it's a women's section, if they learn Torah there or have regular minyanim,
Then it would have
it's
Kedusha's based Knesset.
right. I
Yep.
think that's what he's saying.
So the Penine Halacha, Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, introduces his section on the halachas of Beit Knesset by explaining the spiritual significance of the Beit Knesset. Kedei lavin et ercho ha'atzum shel Beit HaKnesset, to understand the supreme value of a shul. Tzarich litbonein, you need to think about the uvdan, you have to think about the fact, idua b'toldot amim, in the history of nations, kiyumo shel am talui ba'artzo. Number one, the existence of a people is dependent on its land. V'lached kol am shenelatz legalut me'artzo, a people that have been taken in exile away from their land, toch zman katzar ibeid et zehuto v'netma be'mdei hamakom she'elav gila. The group of people that have been removed from their land, they lose their identity and they get swallowed up and assimilate where they are. Ha'am ha'yachid shenishar chai v'kayam b'lo la'amshich lidgorer b'artzo hayam Yisrael. The only people that remained without continuing to live in the land that they were exiled from were the Jewish people. B'midah rabbah, hayaz b'zchut Beit HaKnesset, he says, the Beit HaKnesset was the reason for that. Beit HaKnesset hu me'ein shlucha ruchanit shel Yisrael Beit HaMikdash. It was sort of like an ambassador. It was like an ambassador residence in every place that the Jews ended up. It was like a spiritual Eretz Yisrael Beit HaMikdash. V'chol Yehudi sheniknas leBeit Knesset, v'chol makom shu ba'olam. A Jew walked into a shul anywhere in the world. Zoche linok ma'at mikdushasa shel Eretz Yisrael. Absorbed some of the holiness of Eretz Yisrael. Moshe Nemar, like it says in Yechezkel, Uperish Rabbi Yitzchak, Migdash Ma'at. Elu batik nesusu batik midrashos. That was a drashon in Masechta Megillah on that pasuk in Yechezkel. Even Shabbat HaKnesset u'makom kadosh, and there is sanctity in the shul. Shabbat mitgaleh amunah b'Hashem. People show that they have faith in Hashem, belief in Hashem, because they go and daven there. So kol hayoshev Beis HaKnesset b'koved rosh. Whoever takes it seriously and sits in the shul he's serious about his time that he spends there. Mekayim a mitzvah. He's mekayim a mitzvah. Even without davening, just walking into a shul and having the right attitude about the shul, you're already mekayim the mitzvah. Certainly, if you daven there v'lo made, sheyesh b'yad a mitzvah. So Rav Melamed's comments reflect the assumption that the synagogue is a minor sanctuary Migdash Ma'at. Accordingly, even merely entering the sacred place is a spiritual ascent, rising above the hustle and bustle of mundane material life in order to approach Hashem. In this light, we can better appreciate the practical recommendation of Rabbeinu Bachai Karakemach that one purify one's thoughts before entering a shul. Says Rabbeinu Bachai, Abal Beit HaKnesset, somebody who comes to shul, Roy lo litar mikol machshava ra. He should clear his mind. Ki machshava ra hi tumas halev. It causes a person's heart to be unclean. V'zeh kal v'chomer mashe hitzrich Yaakov taras haguf kisheratza lavo Beis. When Yaakov, before he came to Beis Kel, he wanted taras haguf. Because it says, when he was bringing his family back after 20 years with Lavan, back to Eretz Yisrael, he told them, you have to go to the mikvah, you have to change your garments, you've been in Chutz La'aretz, and so similarly, says Rabbeinu Bachai, we have to have the similar thoughts when we walk into shul. Taking a few moments to focus and purify our thoughts can hopefully enable us to experience and absorb into the synagogue spirituality. May we be successful in appreciating and utilizing the sanctity of the synagogue for great spiritual heights. May Hashem fulfill all of our prayers for the good. Okay, I hear somebody asking a question. No, we don't hear you. We don't hear you. Jacob, you have to do it louder. You have to turn your computer up, your volume up.
Now better?
Do it louder.
I'm on my phone. It doesn't go anymore.
Okay, but maybe your phone volume has to be put up.
Okay, I'll try something later.
No, we can hear you.
So I'm saying the last one Hashem used to say, if you're in a country, a foreign country, and you run into the embassy, you're considered in the land of that country. So similarly, if Eretz Yisrael, that this Knesset is like an embassy of Eretz Yisrael, that you are like in Eretz Yisrael in a sense.
Right? We said it's like being an embassy in all the different places. We know the Gemara says that all the shuls will be picked up and brought to Eretz Yisrael. Bachri Sayomim. The shuls, because there's a Gemara that tells us that Bachri Sayomim, all the shuls and Chutz La'aretz will be picked up and brought to Eretz Yisrael. To make it mamish an embassy. Okay. Now we're going to go to page 257, the halachas of daily Torah study. So, after the Shulchan Aruch goes through Hilchos Tefillah and Hilchos Beis HaKnesses, the Shulchan Aruch has a few simanim on the importance of daily Torah. Oh, in one siman, the importance of daily Torah study in one siman. Shulchan, which is Kuf Nun Hey. The Shulchan Aruch begins its treatment of the subject by stating that one should ideally study Torah following Shacharis. So it looks like the optimum situation is after you finish davening in the morning, you should go into the Beis Medrash and learn. So we will follow Shulchan Aruch's order and examine the parameters of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah and how one should fulfill the mitzvah practically today. Now, to remind everybody, the subject of Torah study was discussed in Tzurba M'Rabanan Volume 2, Shirim 4 to 5. There's some overlap in the material. The Shulchan Aruch discussed it in two places. One in Orach Chaim, in the context of Torah study in daily life. And we studied in Yor Deah, which gave us the full parameters of the mitzvah. And maybe the fact that the Shulchan Aruch repeated it hints to the significance of Torah study, which according to Chazal is equivalent in importance to all other mitzvos. Okay? So first we'll talk about the amount of Torah study necessary to fulfill the mitzvah. How much time must one spend studying Torah each day in order to fulfill the mitzvah? Must one dedicate all of one's available time to the task? Or is it sufficient to set aside a certain amount of time daily? And if so, how much? So there's a famous pasuk in Sefer Yoshua, Perek Aleph, pasuk Ches, Lo yamush Sefer HaTorah ze mipicha. The Sefer Torah should not depart from your mouth. The higisa bo yomam v'layla. Higisa, right? The word higayon means logic, contemplate. Here it means contemplate, day and night. Laman tishmor, so that you will observe everything. Lasos kol hakosov bo, that you will know how to observe that which is written in the Torah. Ki az tatzliach az dakecha, you will be successful on your road. Az taskil, here it says you will prosper. I mean, taskil means you'll become more intelligent. You'll gain wisdom. like the word haskala. The pasuk appears to indicate on a simple level that one must study Torah all day and all night in order to properly fulfill the mitzvah. But there appears to be conflicting opinions in the Gemara with regard to whether this is indeed the halach or not. The opinions are brought in the Gemara Menachos, where Rav Shimon Bar Yochai is holding that even reciting Shema twice a day fulfills the mitzvah, as studying Torah during a small portion of the day and night suffices. On the other, Rabbi Shmuel seemingly tells his nephew that one must study Torah all day and all night, which is more consistent with the simple meaning of the pasuk in Yoshua. A third approach is brought in the Gemara, that the pasuk is actually a bracha given to Yoshua rather than an instruction or command. Rav Yochim Shimon Yochai, afilu lo yikara adam ela kriya shema shachris v'arvis kayim lo yomush. This statement of Yoshua that you should not forsake the Torah day or night by saying kriya shema in the morning, kriya shema in the evening, you fulfilled it. Shaul ben Dama ben Achosos Rabbi Shmuel is Rabbi Shmuel. Shaul ben Dama was the nephew, right? The son of Rabbi Shmuel's sister. The nephew asked his uncle Rabbi Shmuel the following: Kigon ani shenomadati kol Torah kula. Someone like me, where I learned the whole Torah already, ma lilmad chochmas Yavanis. Can I study Greek wisdom? Major machlokes. What chochmas Yavanis is? Is it philosophy? Is it generally secular subjects? Anyways, kara alav mikra zeh. So Rabbi Shmuel told him, Lo yamur sefer Torah zeh mipicha v'gisa b'yom v'layla. Seuv dok shah shein lo min hayom v'lo min halayla v'limod bo chochmas Yavanis. Go find an hour that's not part of the day or part of the night, which is impossible, because it's either day or night. You're supposed to be studying Torah that whole time. So basically, he told him there's no time to study Greek wisdom. But pligid Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani. This is in contradiction to Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani. Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, Rav Yonason. Pasuk zeina loy choiva v'loy mitzvah. The statement that was made to Yoshua is not a command. It was a bracha. Ra HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yoshua shedivrei Torah chavivim alav v'yoser. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that Yoshua loved learning Torah more than anything. Shneamar u'misharso Yoshua b'nu nar lo yamish mitoch ha'ohel. That Yoshua never left Moshe Rabbeinu's tent. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yoshua kol kach chavivim alav divrei Torah lo yomer sefer Torah zemipicha. I'll give you a bracha that you'll always have Torah on your lips. According to this Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel seemingly holds that one must study Torah at every available free moment, and is permitted to study other subjects, such as Greek wisdom, only at a time that is not day or night, which is no time. The question of studying secular studies, according to halacha, is an interesting and complex one that is beyond the purview this year. It should be noted that many commentators have addressed it, including the Ramah. The Ramah notes that although some forbid the study of secular subjects, others permit it bakroi, meaning in a non-permanent manner, provided one has first studied a large amount of Torah. So when people go to college, they don't go to college forever, they go to college for a short period of time. That's certainly akroi, and then they've learned a lot of Torah before they went to college, 12 years in yeshiva, and then maybe post-high school. So it sounds like we fulfill this Ramaz. There's some nice references to refer to. It is said that the Gra studied calculus. He may have written a book on calculus. It's relevant because the Gra lived 1780, 1770, that period of time. Calculus was just discovered. Isaac Newton and then Leibniz, they both discovered calculus in the late 1600s. 1680. But it took about 150 years until the mid 1800s for calculus to sort of get more developed so that it was more useful. And they say that the Gra contributed to that. They say that the Gra studied calculus in the bathroom. Means when he was in the bathroom, that's when he studied, or that's when he thought about these issues. Not because you can't think about Torah in the bathroom. So he thought about calculus in the bathroom. I don't know whether that's apocryphal or whether that's
We know that he studied a lot about astronomy, the Gra, because he wrote a lot about the times, and it shows
Right.
clearly a very developed sense of astronomy and knowledge
mathematics.
and mathematics, right?
Mathematics, yeah. On the other hand, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says they want to fulfill the mitzvah of studying Torah simply by saying Kriya Shema. The Gemara in Brachos also lists the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai about the scope of the mitzvah to study Torah. But in this passage, these Tanoim appear to have reached the opposite conclusion from their positions in Menachos. This many people will remember this Gemara in Brachos. Torah Rabbanan. Vasavta deganecha. You shall harvest your crop. Matam abloimar. I mean, what does this teach us? The Gemara quotes the pasuk in Yoshua. So, Yachol Dvarim Kirsova. I might think that you've got to study day and night. No. Hanik Bayan Minak Derech Eretz to Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel says, listen, you have to make a living. You're a farmer. You got to gather your crops. You can gather your crops. It's the Torah to tell you, Vasafta the Ganecha, that you can take time away from your Torah learning. So, Rav Shimon ben Yochai Oimer, Efshar Adam Chorish B'Shas Charisha, Dizareh B'Shas Zriya, the concept is a person going to plow when you're supposed to plow, and put seeds when you're supposed to seed. The koitzer, and basically what he's saying is, there's never going to be time. There's always something to do. In I don't know what month it is, but in September you plow, and then you seed in October, and then you harvest, and the dash, and then after you harvest you have to thresh it. The zone you have to throw it in the wind. So Torah Mate Alet, you're never going to study Torah because there's always something to do in making a living. So in fact, this is the source for the whole concept of Kola. The Jew can learn the whole time, and if Hashem is happy with him, his work will be done by other people. Shenamnar, the unduzarim, strangers will stand. The road soinchem will herd our sheep. Uvnei mechar achrichem v'char mechem, and strangers will plow and deal with our vines. Pasuk in Yeshayahu. Uvizman she'en Yisrael oitzer mitzvot shel makom, l'achta nasa de'atzman. If they're not in good favor with Hashem, they'll have to do the work themselves. It's like a punishment. Shenemar fasafta deganecha. V'la'od el shlach zacher nasa zalyanu. They'll have to do other people's jobs. Shenemar ve'avadata soivecha. You'll have to work for your enemy. Omer Abai harbe also Rabbi Shmuel also bedin. Abai says practically, many people went to work, made a living, and then learned part-time, and they were successful. Many people tried like Rav Shimon Yochai, the low also beyond, and they were not successful. According to this Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel holds that one should work in order to earn a livelihood, and one should not study Torah full-time. By contrast, Rav Shimon Yochai seemed to hold that one must study Torah full-time at the expense of earning a living by working the land, since otherwise there'll be no remaining time for Torah study. He claims, though, that if the people collectively follow the Torah, they will merit the assistance of others in earning a livelihood. But Abaya seems to adopt the position of Rabbi Shmuel, when he notes that many people are not successful in supporting themselves through the method of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. Thus, Rabbi Shmuel in Brachos seems to allow work even at the expense of Torah study, while Menachos he holds that one must study Torah every moment of the day. And Rav Shimon ben Yochai, on the other hand, holds in Brachos that one must study Torah full time, even if one will not be unable to work. But in Menachos he holds that you can fulfill the mitzvah by reciting Shema twice daily. We can illustrate this contradiction through the following table. Rabbi Shmuel in Brachos says you work normally, but in Menachos it says you should study Torah full time. In Brachos it's the opposite for Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. He said you should study Torah full time, and Rabbi Shmuel in Menachos he says you can fulfill the obligation through Shema. Now, how can we resolve this? Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky, the father of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, the stipler, suggests the following in Kilas Yaakov. That means the minimal measure of study necessary to fulfill the obligation of daily Talmud Torah is reciting Shema twice a day. However, one is obligated to study as much as one is capable every day, with no maximum amount given. Says the Kilas Yaakov, the Nira Dagerer Hukach. This is the parameter. The B'chol mitzvah is chiyuvius. Whenever there's an obligatory mitzvah, Gam kishu onus milakai b'mitzvah, even if he has some emergency where it's hard for him to be the mitzvah, the lekalav tainu tefillah bitula. Now, there may not be a claim against him that he didn't spend the whole time doing the mitzvah. We call makom chiyuv rami alei, but he has a chiyuv. If he's an honest, he can't fulfill it. There's no complaint for not fulfilling it, but you still have a chiyuv. Aval kagon mitzvah tzedakah, mishu oni, vein lo klam malite, and oni doesn't have anything to give. Ain't ever get an onus. He's not like somebody who's had an accident and can't make it to shul. It's potter. Dezeu ikar ashir litem tzedakah hu kfi yecholto. He's exempt from giving tzedakah. Tzedakah is based on a person's ability. She'ein lo, like a chiyuv klalite. If an oni doesn't have, he has no chiyuv. V'chein the mitzvahs gilas chasadim shebegufo. We have certain mitzvahs that we do with our body, going to a wedding, going to a levaya. Mashiyev shalolasos. If he cannot do it, ein zevigeder onus. Rakzeu gvul ashir shel mitzvah. It's how far the shear is. Sheyasa k'fi yecholto. He does as much as he can. Given shator lo nitna zman v'shir kavua, ashir k'fi yecholto. The Torah didn't give us a specific amount of shear, how much time to learn, or how much time to do any mitzvah for gemilos chesed. So v'chein mitzvahs Talmud Torah. Even shaloi nitma Torah shear, the Torah didn't give a clear shear, but meila chiyuv k'fi yecholto. It's whatever he can do. V'azman shu onus melilmod, he has to make a parnasa. So he's considered an onus. Ein ze begetter mevatel mitzvah b'oimes. It's not considered that he was mevatel the mitzvah because he was an onus. Elazel gvil chiyuvo. It's part of what is chiyuv. He was not mechuyev during that time. Shuad ad kamashev shalom. Rak perechad shachri perechad arvis chiyuv kavu uborer. We have one set and clear obligation: chapter in the morning, chapter in the evening. Dichsiv v'gisa bo yomam v'layla. She honest with perek zeh v'chashav mevatel mitzvah. If he can't even do that, then he's an onus for doing a mitzvah. Kilas Yaakov explains that the principle that Talmud Torah is overridden when one is obligated in other mitzvahs is based on the same idea. Although the general is that osik mitzvah, poter b'nei mitzvah, one who's engaged in one mitzvah is exempt from the other mitzvah. Talmud Torah is different, since the obligation itself does not apply when one is engaged in other important activities. Based on this Kilas Yaakov, we can suggest that the resolution to the contradiction between the two passages in the Gemara is as follows. According to Rabbi Shmuel, one is obligated to study Torah any time that he is capable of doing so. However, any time that he must devote to earning a livelihood is not included, and the mitzvah does not apply at that time. But by contrast, Rav Shimon ben Yochai holds the ideal level is to study Torah all the time, even at the expense of toiling to earn a living. But the minimal obligation is reciting Shema in the morning and at night, as he said in Menachos. How do the Amoraim in later times of the Gemara and Rishonim hold with respect to this issue? The Gemara in the Dorim cites a statement of Rav, where he appears to side with the position that the minimal obligation of Talmud Torah is by reciting Shema. Somebody wakes up and says, I'm going to study this parak. Neder Gadol, Neder Lokei Yisrael. It's a neder, and the vow takes effect. But Valo Mushba V'Oimedu. But we all took a shvuah at Har Sinai, and one of the mitzvahs was to learn Torah. So how could the shvuah have a chalois on a prior shvuah? Ein shvuah, chalal shvuah. So my kamashman, the filu zruzi ba'alma, hanad Rav Gidol kamoisa. Maybe you could make a vow to motivate you. So what's the chiddush? You already made a statement like that. Kamashman, even the boy potter nafshe b'kriyas mashachos v'arvis. Since a person can fulfill his obligation of liman Torah with reciting Shema in the morning and evening, mishum hachol hachi chayil shvu alei. So the oath can have an effect on him, and because he can patch himself with those two. So if he made a neder that I'm going to study another masechta, there wasn't mushba v'oimin on that masechta, he's allowed to do that. It'd be chalois. And the Ritva comments on this Gemara, Umadrina de kiven the boy potter nafshe b'kriyas mashachos v'arvis, since he can fulfill his obligation with kriyas shema, chayil shvu alei. So the shvuah that he made that I'm going to study that masechta today, schal. Perush, hadam rinan, the boy potter nafshe b'kriyas mashachos v'arvis v'nafak mechovas v'gidim avalayla. Because once he read kriyas shema in the morning and night, he fulfill the obligation, and therefore he has no more obligation. Hainu b'lo efshar le'tfei. And the fact he has no time to do more, since he's making a livelihood. But if it wasn't for the fact that he exempted himself by reciting Shema, he wouldn't have fulfilled his limud at Torah. Many achronim adopt the approach of the Ritva as well, that a person is obligated to study Torah as much as he is capable of. He should not suffice with reciting Shema twice daily. They bring support for this position from other Talmudic passages, such as from the Gemara in Kiddushin. This indicates that one's obligation to study Torah far exceeds simply reciting Shema, but rather includes knowing the Torah well. Ton Rabbono. Vishinantam, shiyu divrei Torah mechudodim beficha. The words of Torah should be on your lips. Shim shalacham adam davar, a person would ask you a question. Al tizgamim v'tomerlo, elamor lachem miyad, don't stutter. Maybe, I think the answer should be on the tip of your tongue, to be able to give it to him right away. Rashi, Yehu mechudodim beficha, chazar le'em, you need to do chazara. Uvdok ba'omkam, and know its depth. Shemishalcha adam, lo titzarach legamgem, you shouldn't stutter or hesitate. Ela shetucha loimer miyad. Now Rav Meir Simcha of Dvins, the Or Sameach, the Meshech Chochma, follows this general approach that a person must learn as much as he is capable. He explains that the mitzvah of Talmud Torah differs for each individual. the minimum obligation that applies to everyone encompasses only the recitation of Shema twice daily. But each individual is still obligated to study Torah according to his intellectual and mental capabilities, and as much as his other pursuits in life allow. That's where balance comes in. Says the Or Sameach. The Or Sameach lived in Dvinsk in the late 19th century. I think he may even have passed away in the early 20th century. Near Li Levoyer, the be'emes kol ha-mitzvos, hema shavim lefachos, shebebchusim ul Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom. Everyone has the same shaykhs to mitzvahs, the lowest person and Moshe Rabbeinu. The Torah achas yelachem. It's one Torah. V'chiyuv mitzvah gvul yeshla. Now, there are limits to the obligation. One atilas esrog bininua ba'alma yotza. You take a lulav and esrog and you shake it. You're yotza. Rak hamedagdikim noitznes kol hayom. Some people walk around with the lulav and esrog a whole day. At one side, Rav Gamliel Rabinovitz, Sidney Teichman, and I visited him on Hoshana Rabbah late in the afternoon. He was holding his lulav and esrog a whole day. So the person who grabbed it and shook it and put it down, he's also he was yotzei the mitzvah. But there are people who are yotzei it in a different way. Nimtza mitzvahs Talmud Torah is the same thing. Asher b'vadim yivakesh adam terefu mazon. He's trying to earn a livelihood. So it's not going to. He's not blowing off the mitzvahs Talmud Torah, because vasata the ganechaksiv. You have to make a living. Somebody who has a weak temperament. Kadosh Baruch Hu made a mitzvah Talmud Torah for everybody. He can't put the same obligation of Talmud Torah on everybody. But he gave each person the mitzvah. The Chacham gave us a parameter. What are the two parameters? Kriya Shema b'shachris, Kriya Shema b'arvis. Elaine Kriya Shema in the morning and the evening. You at least fulfill that pasuk. Ulam yeter mizeh, hu bichlolei hamet mitzvos asher nivdelu v'nifredu zeh kol ish lefi erchel ma'uto. But we have the same example like we talked about lulav. Each person, based on his essence and nature, are going to be mekayim mitzvah differently. A person has to put all of his koichas into learning Torah. Many, many places in Torah where it bewarns us to study Torah. You have to arouse yourself to go and sit in the walls of the yeshiva, kasher harbu the davar bezas for makdoshim, the way the holy books tell us. Even the boy potter nafshem kriyash mashachas varvis, shemachal chal shvu alei. Since if a person makes a shvu, I'm going to study a masechta, it's chal on him, because he pottered himself with that. But there's shazeh mashin mechuyev lilmod b'chol kocho. The fact that a person has to study Torah with his whole heart is going to be fulfilled by that neder that he made. And Einam Nachukim HaKolim Suga Yisraeli. It's not necessarily all Jews are going to be able to handle the same amount of Torah. Another important element of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah involves the kviyus, or regularity. According to more in Shabbos, one of the first questions will be asked when we are judged after our years of life is, did you designate set times for Torah study? Amar Rava, B'shosh machnisim odem ladin, oimim lo, nosata v'nosata b'emuna. Did you do business honestly? Kavata itim l'Torah. Did you set aside set times to learn? Asakta b'fri of revia. Did you have children? Tzipisa liyeshua. Did you wait for Mashiach to come? So, just the fact that, thank God, we've had this year every Tuesday night at a set time, 8:00, is certainly fulfilling the mitzvah of kviyas. It couldn't be more kviyas than that. We'll see. You have to have kviyas every day, but establishing set shiurim is part of kviyas. Rashi explains that a person must engage in earning a living, but in order to ensure that one does not spend all of his time on his livelihood and neglect his spiritual duties, the Torah established that a person engages in fixed Torah study every day. Rashi says, person's got to make a living. Shemein derech eretz ein Torah. So you have to designate set times for Torah. You shouldn't spend a whole day in your parnasa. The Rambam appears to highlight this aspect of kviyas as well, and writes based upon the pasuk of Vigita that fixed times include study during the day and at night. Bein ani, bein osher, whether you're poor or wealthy, bein sholem beguv, bein bal yisrael, even if you're not well, bein bocher, bein whether you're young or an old man, even if an ani is going around collecting at the doors. Afilu bal isha ubanim, man has a wife and children. He has to set aside time to study day and night. The Gemara in Eruvin relates that when one of the Amorim missed his set time for learning, he treated it like a monetary loan, which he has to pay back. If he missed his 30 minutes, for him it was probably 6 hours, whatever, of that daily amount, and for some reason he couldn't do it because he was onus that day, he paid it back on another day. Says Rashi, he would say, I'm going to learn 10 prokim today. And he would learn it. Maybe he got in a business deal. So normally he would have learned those 10 prokim in a day, but if he got busy in business, he would make it up at night. Shulchan Aruch and Orach Chaim emphasizes the importance of fixing set times for learning Torah, even if it comes at the expense of earning a large sum of money. The Ramah comments that even one who does not know how to study Torah should go to the Beit Midrash, since one receives reward simply for the effort in going. Achar, sheyatz beis hakneses, after davening, yevach lebeis hamidrash v'yikvais lilmod. The best time to do it in the morning after Shachris, and learn a certain amount of time. V'tzarch shoso esia kavua. It should be fixed. Shelo yavirenu, and you don't miss. Even if he's going to miss a big deal. And says the Ramah, Afmi sheni yodeh lumo, yelech lebeis hamedrash, uschar licha biyado. He gets schar for going. Or yikval hamakom, or he set aside a place for yilmid ma'at b'mashi yodea. He should study that which he knows. V'yachshov b'nyanav yikanes b'libo yerushamayim. And he should think about what he studied. And he should allow Yiras Hashem to come into his heart. The Mishnah Brura brings the Gemara in Shabbos and stresses the importance of setting fixed times for Torah study, ideal in the morning following Shabbos. V'yikba the Issa b'Gemara, it's written in the Gemara, Shemach Achdis Adam Ladin Sholno So Kavati Itim LaTorah, because eventually a person is going to be asked about that. The Tov Sheyikba Es Miyad Achar Tefillah Mishum. There's a saying, you should go from strength to strength. That's why he recommends going from davening in the morning to learning. וגם dim ילך מקודם לעסוק בחיישין שם ימשך לצפות לקביוסו. Not only that, if you went directly to your business, you're not going to learn that day. And you're going to skip it. Shlo yavirenu, the ikar mitzvah Talmud Torah, ein l'shir. The basic mitzvah, there's no shir. The chiyuva hu kol hayom. There's an obligation to hold day. Kol zman sheyesh lo pnai. Whenever he has freedom. Hidichsiv lo yamur sevet az mepicha. V'amar chazar of chilkim shem Rav Simon alisa terasu itim. Areza made for a breeze. That means a person who just learns a set time, even though you have more time, you are violating the covenant with Hashem. You have to set a time to study Torah where we're never going to miss. Like Daf Yomi, right? Our group has been studying Daf Yomi since 1989, every day. And we actually used to not do it Friday, and we used to do a blot and a half Saturday and a blot Sunday. It's actually better now because we learn Friday afternoon. So we actually do some learning every day, which fits this Kvias B'Itim every day. V'mira lo ones. And if something happens, he couldn't do it. It was emergency. He should view it as a debt. Should pay it back at night. Like the Gemara that we learned. The you should do it right after you leave shul in the morning. So the custom that some rabbis have of learning Kitzur Shulchan Aruch or Mishnah Brura or some halacha after davening, so that fulfills this issue. The Piskei Tshuva adds that one should also try to study at the same time each day. Muva b'shem Haramomi Panu, who was a Rishon, shegames ashor ikva. He should designate the time of the day. Don't jump around. It should always be the same time. Some people before davening. Because there's a concept of going to davening from learning. You should do it both day and night. Okay. Comments, questions here I wrote.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I have plenty of volume 13s. I want to send them out to those who aren't in the Hancock Park area. So within the Tzurba chat, give me your address and I will send them out this week.
Thank you. Very
Thank
good.
Thank you, Harold.
Thank you, Harold.
Yeah.
Thank you, Harold.
Welcome.
Thank you.
If you can send them across Highland, it's very nice of you.
I'll send a private messenger.
A
Thank you,
pigeon,
very
a carrier pigeon.
Have a
You
good
know where I live,
Well,
Harold.
good week, everyone. Shkoyach.
Okay.